righty. Welcome to the Visionaries Show. I'm your host, Doug Crowe, and I've got an amazing guest on today. I know I always say that, but this one really is amazing. And what he's going to talk about today is something that is near and dear to my heart. But before I get into that, let me tell you something. There's resumes out there, and then there's manuscripts. And this gentleman's manuscript is a resume, and it's so long, I couldn't even possibly, it would take up the whole show to tell you that he was, a former ambassador to Denmark, right? He has been in business his whole life. He's known the presidents. He's got such an amazing resume. You have to look at it in the show notes if you want to get into it. And all that being said, our topic today is amazing to think about because most of you are thinking about, hey, I want to write a nonfiction business book. Nothing wrong with that. I encourage you to do that. It's what I do for a living. But we're going to talk about a fiction book today, and I'll tell you why that's important. Because good nonfiction has to have stories, has to have characters, has to have development. And there's no better method and process and platform to understand storytelling than good fiction books. So we're going to talk about that in detail today, how it relates to business, and specifically about our author's book. So without further ado, welcome to the show today, Mr. Jim Cain. Jim, how are you?
Great. Doug, thank you. It's great to be with you, and I look forward to talking about how we got from the world of diplomacy and sports into writing novels.
It's like I'm talking to a better looking version of Forrest Gump here. You've got like so many things in your resume. It's hard to know where to start. Other than the fact
I do like Tom Hanks is a good looking guy, though. Better looking as he got older.
Well, and I asked you before the show started about your title. So some people still call you ambassador because the title stays like president. So you're Ambassador Jim Cain. So
yeah, that's right. I will happily invite you to call me Jim, and we don't really use titles in America. We use titles in Europe. They love the title. My actual title was Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary, and they call you Your Excellency. Of course, we don't use titles here in America, but there are two people that I insist to use my formal title, and that's my two brothers.
Get him, boy. I like that.
Yeah, please call me Jim.
Oh my gosh, that's great. So we're going to talk about business and your fiction book. And before we get to that, how that's all related and how it can help people out, I want to hear about your background some more because, becoming an ambassador is no easy feat. I know more about it than the average person, but you know more than me by 100-fold. But I know it's a very selective and exclusive process. So how did that get started?
There are really two ways to become ambassador in the U.S. We have a very unique system. One is to spend your entire life in the Foreign Service, State Department, and work your way up to an ambassadorship. But you'll probably never, ever be ambassador to one of the big countries in the world because in our system, if you're selected by the president, i.e. the friend of the president, trusted by the president, then, you can be appointed ambassador to one of the really large, significant countries. And that's really been our tradition since 1952. And I went the latter route, Doug. I did not spend my career in Foreign Service. I was a lawyer. Then I was in business. I worked for President Reagan when I was young. I took a year off of college to work for him in his campaign in 1979, 1980. But then when I went to law practice, I went out of politics, left the law practice to go run the Carolina Hurricanes hockey team, was their first president in Raleigh, first run to the Stanley Cup Finals. Again, we lost to Detroit in Game 7. And anyway, so I left that at the invitation of President Bush to go serve as U.S. ambassador in Denmark. So I was a political appointee, not a career Foreign Service guy. And that's about as short as I can make that otherwise very long story.
Do they have to have they have a committee asking you questions and stuff when you get that? Is it like grilling you?
Yeah, your Senate confirmed. So I was a Republican nominee, right, from President Bush, and Republicans were in charge of the Senate. So I was fairly confident I would make it through confirmation. The only guy who gave me a lot of grief, asked questions he knew I couldn't answer, was Joe Biden. He was trying to embarrass the Bush guy, and we laughed about it later. He came to Copenhagen while I was there, and we made up. But anyway, what I didn't know is that his chief of staff was the nephew of a former U.S. ambassador in Denmark, a guy named Nick Sweat. So he had filled his boss with lots of tough questions anyway to try to embarrass me. But anyway, eventually we got through and we had 4 good years over in Copenhagen.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, one of my other good friends, Paul Clayson, was an advance agent for the White House for under Reagan, I'm pretty sure, or Bush. I think it was Reagan. I know it's staffs of thousands of people, but good times. All right, so you did this. attorney turned ambassador, and then when the ambassadorship is over, you went back to business and
Yeah, I had, I enjoyed the legal career, but didn't want to go back into the hourly practice of law. I loved my job in sports, but wasn't looking to relocate outside of North Carolina, which is our hometown. So went back into business, primarily working for U.S. companies who wanted to expand overseas or vice versa. But I came back in the depths of the recession. You recall those days, Paul. This was like 09, 010 when the economy was
oh
really
yeah,
tough.
I had a big shift in my life at that time. Yep.
Yes, I know you did. I know you did, and I admire how you shifted and created opportunity out of that adversity. But we I created a company back in those days. There was no growth in Europe, no growth in America. All the growth was in the emerging or surging economies of Latin America, the Middle East, Asia, the
Mm-hmm.
former Soviet states. So if you're an American consumer brand, Apple, McDonald's, you got to get to those markets. You got to get to
Yeah.
those growing markets. But it doesn't matter whether you are Apple or McDonald's. You can't go to those markets alone. You have to have a local strategic
Mm-hmm.
partner, and that became
Yeah.
our business. We working for primarily Western consumer brands. We would go into these markets, vet, due diligence, find the right partner, and structure joint ventures or license or franchise agreements with
Yep.
the brand and the local partner. And that's really what I did for the following 10 years. Our first two clients were good companies. Lego was our first client. We took them
Oh,
to the Middle
nice.
East in
Huh?
2010, and then Bang& Olufsen, which is a very
Mm-hmm.
high-end,
Yeah.
audio stereo company.
Right.
We took
Right.
them to China a year or two later. But since then,
Amazing.
we've worked with many, about 50 or 60 Western brands, all of whom you would
Mm-hmm.
know, from Five Guys hamburgers to Abercrombie and Fitch and Godiva
Nice.
chocolate to Macy's. So anyway, that was a
That's
great run. But
fascinating.
I sort of did that and then decided to move on to other priorities in life.
Hmm. I got a quick story. When I was an exchange student to Japan right after high school, and my host father was a VP of NEC, and he's telling me stories about how they would break into the Middle East markets. He said, we don't do any business. We send someone there for a year just to learn the culture first. For a whole year, they invest in the guy. You go there and hang out and live, and then after the year, they know the culture, and they introduce products and services after that.
Well, that's so smart, and
Yeah.
and one of the unique opportunities, having been a U.S. ambassador, the power of networking and relationships, is the most powerful thing in business, in my experience. And so, the experience that you just shared, I could short circuit some of that because using
Yeah.
my diplomatic network,
There you go.
I could go into
Mm-hmm.
take a country, France. No, France, everybody knows how to operate. Take Saudi or take the Emirates. I could go in
Uh-huh.
through my diplomatic network, the U.S. ambassador or the
Yeah.
Saudi ambassador to the U.S., and quickly identify who are the qualified potential partners to work with an American company, in that culture.
Right.
And it sort of
Right.
allowed me to get to that short list with the right introduction, because sometimes that's the key
Man.
is who connects you with that potential partner, right? So I was
Yep.
able to get in to those discussions more quickly,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, than the conventional route of sending somebody there for a year to learn the
Right.
culture, learn the country, and learn
Yeah.
learn the network.
Especially nowadays, things shift so quickly. I think that's probably not just faster, but probably necessary. I'm a complete agreement on the relationship thing. My whole business is built on relationships only, so I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
As it relates to business, now we've got all this business, diplomatic experience, and something compelled you to write a fiction novel. So hold that book up for a second, Jim. Let's take a look at that. You got a copy there?
Yeah.
Hold it
Oh
up,
yeah.
put it in front of your camera. There you go. Reign of Secrets. Man, I
Reign of
like that cover and title. Good job.
Thank you.
It's a little bit of like Rain of Fire, and then the secret. It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
So tell us about this book, and then tell us a little bit why you wrote it.
Well, it's historical fiction. I describe it as a diplomatic thriller, sort of in the genre of a Dan Brown, although it has a
Nice.
more positive ending, I think, maybe than some of Dan Brown's work. But
Okay.
so I have a friend named Jeffrey Archer, who is the best-selling living British author whose name is not J.K. Rowling, right? So Jeffrey Archer has sold 300 million books.
Oh
And
my.
Jeffrey wanted me. He wanted, because I love telling stories. He's a member of Parliament, but he's a great storyteller. And he
Mm.
wanted me to, because I have great stories in my life, and that
Yeah.
life is about adventures and stories. And he tried to convince me to do an autobiography, do a memoir. But the more we talked, he said something that I wrote down. I think I even put it in the book, and that is, from the theater of politics, the richest tales of fiction emerge. And this book, Reign of Secrets, the opening scene of this book is 100% realistic. And here's the scene. 2006, my wife and I are in the Royal Cathedral outside of Denmark for the reburial service of Empress Maria Fedorovna. Now, you've never heard of her. Most of your listeners haven't. But she was born Princess Dagmar, the youngest daughter of Christian IX. She was married off to Alexander III, who became Tsar of Russia. So she's the Empress of Russia. She's the mother of the last Tsar of Russia, Nicholas II. She's the grandmother of Anastasia, and she's the one for whom Fabergé made all the eggs.
I need a flow
Everybody
chart
knows
here,
the
but okay,
Fabergé
keep
eggs.
going.
So she's the Empress, the Empress of Russia. She escapes when the Bolsheviks invade in 1917. She hides out in Crimea with her eggs buried in the sand until her nephew, who's the King of England, rescues her and brings her back to England, then to Copenhagen, where she dies in 1928, never believing that her son Nicholas and Alexander and the family were killed. She never believed they were killed. So I'm sitting there 80 years after this lady's been buried, wondering why Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, has written a letter to the Queen of Denmark asking for the return of the long dead remains of this former empress. And it dawns on me, this is 20 years ago now, Doug, that Putin is trying to bring the Russian Empire back. And there's something about this empress that's key. It also dawns on me that the Danish royal family, people don't know this, the same family's been on the throne in Denmark for over 1,000 years.
I knew that.
Whereas every other royal family in Europe has either been, or kicked out, or the bloodlines have been stirred. I mean, the Brits are newcomers. They've only been on the throne for 300 years, and they're German. They're not even British, right?
Yep.
But why is it this family in this country has stayed on the throne for 1,000 years? There's a secret, and Vladimir Putin's out to find it. So, everything I said to you until that last sentence is true.
Well, it might be true. We don't know. Unless
That's
you've
true.
interviewed him. I mean,
But again, it's a rich tale that I think is better told as fiction, right? And there are many great scenes in this book that came from our real life experience while serving as U.S. ambassador, but they're woven into this tale of fiction that I think makes for a rich novel.
I love that. Oh, I'm going to read this. This sounds really a lot of fun. I like history, and I like a little intrigue and all that. That's really good. Very cool.
Well, I hope you'll enjoy it. It hit the bestseller list on Amazon pretty quickly, and I had billed it as a trilogy following the same character through his career for three books, kind of like Tom Clancy and Jack Ryan. And my publisher was like, "Okay, this first book sold pretty well. We got to get that second one out. Remind me how long it took you to write the first one." I said, 20 years.
A good friend of mine, John David Mann, he's a co-author with Bob Berg in the Go Giver series. Yep. He wrote a book called Steel Fear. It's about a murder mystery on an aircraft carrier. And he had a Navy guy obviously co-write it with him to get the details right, like, Clancy, all this research. And he got a movie option on it. I just talked to him 2 weeks ago. They had to renew the option, so it's still in play. But those things don't always, the odds are against you, but at least they re-optioned it. So we'll see what happens with that.
Oh, great. Look, I'm fully open to that. So if any of your listeners, are in that world, just let me know.
Right. Yeah. He came up with the second one, Cold Fear, which takes place in Iceland as a follow-up series. But same as you, his publisher liked and they had good throughput on the first one. So he had to kind of work a little harder because he had his friend who helped him with the Steel Fear because he was a Navy guy. But he told me, he goes, this Cold Fear happens in Iceland. He said, never been there. So he had to, do more internet research than on the boots research like you've done.
Oh, look, one of the things I love about writing fiction is it forces you to travel these places. The Reign of Secrets took place mainly in Copenhagen and Rome and Dublin. My next book, I won't tell you the title yet, but that takes place mainly in London and in Istanbul. So I've got to go spend more time in London and Turkey in the coming months. My wife's looking forward to that.
All right. Well, and that's tax deductible trip because you're doing research for your book, right? So you got to keep that in mind.
Well, I didn't declare that for that purpose, but hey, I'll talk to my CPA about it.
I'm not giving tax advice. I'm just saying it's an option. That's all.
Yeah. All right.
So I started this show by talking about, how fiction and nonfiction relate to each other because a good nonfiction book tells stories, doesn't just give you data. Otherwise, it turns into a textbook. And you've done both. You've done a nonfiction book and your fiction books now. So tell us about your connecting thread between those.
Yeah, I wrote a look. I think people say, "Why'd you write a book?" I had a group of lawyers yesterday say, "Why'd you write a book?" I said, "Well, don't most people want to write a book? I mean, really, don't we all want to record
Yeah.
life experiences and imagination in a written document that we leave as a legacy behind?" I think we all sort of want to do that. So I had the great experience of publishing a book right before I left Denmark. I had a great time, a great successful, time over there. I had done this bike tour around Denmark and kept a blog and did 37 days, 3,500 kilometers around the country. And it was really successful as a diplomatic, PR thing. And so one of my staff members said, "You got to write a book, turn this into a book." And so I wrote a book that was published in December of 8. I knew I was leaving office in January of 09. And it was a message to the Danish people. It was called The American on Denmark Diplomacy and Democracy. And so it was a message book, but it also had a lot of stories in it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it probably sold as a bestseller because of the final chapter, which was the top 10 most embarrassing things that happened to me in Denmark. And
now I got some material for the show. Give me number 3.
Oh my gosh, some hilarious stories. But Condoleezza Rice came to town in December on her farewell tour, and she said, "So Jim, how did your book do?" I said, "Madam Secretary, I'm proud to tell you my book was a bestseller in Denmark. It sold the equivalent of 500,000 books." She said, "What? You sold 500,000 books in 2 weeks in Denmark?" I said, no. Denmark is 1/50th the size of the U.S. I sold the equivalent of 500,000 books in America, but 10,000 books is like technically a bestseller in Denmark. So I was happy with the sales. Yeah, which all went to charity, by the way. I didn't make any money off that one. It all went to charity, by the way.
Hey, I got to ask you because I've always respected that woman. What's she like in real life?
Oh, she's so engaged and so smart, so into sports. I mean, she is such a sports fan, as many people know. I think she really was hoping she might find a path into being an NFL team president or commissioner, deputy commissioner. She is so smart. She's much smarter than I am. She was quizzing me about, my team roster and who we're drafting the next season. Yeah, she's very, very engaged, very smart lady.
Did she not stay in politics for an obvious or not obvious reason, or?
Well, she never was. She would say she was never into politics.
Yeah,
fair enough. She served the president as, on the national security level, and he picked her to be, Secretary of State in his second term. Colin Powell was first term. She was second term. And, like some like many, frankly, in that position, not including the current Secretary Rubio, she was on the staff. She wasn't running for office. She was on the staff helping the president, and she did a great job, I think, as Secretary of State.
Yeah, it's always you can always recognize when somebody speaking about their intelligence level. I guess. She seemed like a smart cookie, so I gotta say. Shout out to you, Condoleezza. You're listening. We really respect you.
Yeah, she always intimidated me. She's so smart.
Yeah, right. I can see that. Okay, so the fiction and nonfiction world, obviously being ambassador and business, and the nonfiction one, you mentioned earlier that it was a passion project. It was fun, but you said also to me before the show started that there's some messages there for other people to gain from, not just entertainment, but something else.
Yeah, and again, it's maybe hard to describe if you haven't read the book, but this is very much one of those books that presents a force of evil counterimposed with a force of good. And you could tell from just the back cover of the book and what I've said already that Vladimir Putin is the bad guy in my book. Yeah. And if you were one of those, and there are some out there on both left and right, who are fans of Vladimir Putin for some reason. But if you're a fan of Vladimir Putin, you will probably not like my novel, right? But the message is that, and look, just to back up a minute, if you and I share the unfortunate fact of having been through difficult times in our lives. My difficult time was having lost a son-in-law to ISIS terrorism in 2016, and writing became my therapy, but it also just confronted us personally as a family, with evil. I mean, look, I had spent 4 years starting every morning, Doug, with the same threat briefing that the president got. Now, my threat notebook was smaller than his. Mine was focused mainly on Europe. But, I got that threat briefing every day, but I'd never really met anybody who affected by terrorism. I didn't really know anybody at 9/11. We all cared about it, but didn't have a personal connection. But when our son-in-law and his sister were killed in the ISIS terrorist attack in Brussels in March of 2016, it rocked my world. And,
Mm.
I basically gave up on my career and just focused on our daughter, trying to,
Yeah.
bring our daughter back to a path to hope and happiness.
Nice.
And writing became my outlet, became my therapy. So, as I mentioned earlier, this plot had come to me 10 years earlier, 2007, but it really
Mm.
wasn't until 2016 when I just needed an outlet that I started focusing on writing, as my outlet. And
Mhm.
the fact that there is evil in the world, with a hero or heroes, in this case an
Yep.
American and an Irish attaché, who are confronting that evil. And it wouldn't surprise you that in the end, evil was vanquished by good.
Yay.
And it is very much a book about American exceptionalism,
Yep.
with a small e, not the capital E, but that America, has to play a role for good in the world. I saw that when I saw America in the rearview mirror for 4 years living in Denmark. The world wants America to play that role. We need to play that role. I don't
Yep.
have sympathy for those who want to isolate and be insular, because if we don't
Yeah.
play that role for good, there is nobody else out there willing,
Eh,
able, or more importantly, capable of playing it. And that's sort of the message that comes through, I think, and I hope, in the book.
boy, that's a very important message, by the way. I mean, yeah, we've both been around for more than a decade or two, so we've all seen the divisiveness get kind of weird lately. I'm like, really? It's just
Yeah.
odd things we've all seen. It's just kind of
Well,
explain it.
it is, and it's I know you're in South Carolina.
Yep.
The book is not political. It's not
Yeah, I
partisan
get that. It's fine.
political.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did send a copy to Lindsey Graham, your late senator, who
Yes.
I,
Yeah.
I was very, wasn't real close to him. Met him a number of times. He came over to Denmark. I took him to Greenland. He and John McCain and Saxby Chambliss and a couple others took a
Uh huh.
delegation to Greenland back in '07.
Wow.
And oh my gosh, I could tell stories about that trip and what I heard on that trip. Talk about two salty individuals, McCain and Graham. They have very tart, sharp tongues. Being ex-military guys, they enjoyed that trip. But anyway, Lindsey, like him or not, he exemplified that muscular
Hmm.
American presence on the global stage that I think, from a bipartisan perspective, America needs to continue to play in the years ahead.
Yeah, I mean, historically speaking, I was talking to my friend General Leonard about this. All I know from the history books on World War II is that, the isolationist movement and Limburg and all that stuff, and whether we knew it was coming or planned it, but getting involved, if we had not gotten involved with World War II, it could have been a whole different world right now we're living in. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that
Well, I'll
was
give you one quick example. So
yeah.
the residence we lived in Denmark, and most of our U.S. ambassadors' residences overseas are grand homes.
Hmm.
Our home in Copenhagen was thought to be the largest, nicest non-royal private residence in all of Copenhagen, which is why the German high commander kicked out the occupants and moved in 1940 when the Germans occupied Denmark. And that's how it became our residence. It's where
Wow.
the surrender occurred, where
Yeah.
after Denmark was liberated. And we arrived. I sort of have this fascination with history,
Hmm.
and I tried to identify all of the living members of the Danish resistance who had fought, with us, beside us,
Yeah.
against the
Yeah.
Nazis. And we did. We identified about 35 who were still living, and we
Yeah.
had a reception, a tea for them one day.
Hmm.
And Doug, just seeing the emotion in those, at that point, 80, 90-year-old men, some in wheelchairs, some with canes, some walking on their own
Hmm.
steam, coming through the doors of the American ambassador's residence, which symbolized for them, again, it was the home of the Nazis,
Yeah.
but is now the home of the liberator. They see
Hmm.
America as their protector, defender, big brother,
Yeah.
best friend, and seeing the emotion and the way that, in their mind, they revere the role America has played in the world, was just brought back home again. This lesson that we as America cannot forsake that role and forget that
Yeah.
role. If we do, the world is going to go even, you know, in a worse direction much more quickly.
I've tried to be libertarian most of my life, and it's really hard. But you can't fight history on these things. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, the world does need a policeman sometimes, I guess. So
Yeah.
You can't fight it all the time. I get it.
Yeah.
Well, I love that fact that, like most authors, I've been on podcasts as a guest myself, and sometimes a host will ask me, what's your favorite book? What's the best book someone should read? And my response has always been the same. The most important book to read is the one that you write yourself. And so I congratulate you for taking your tragedy and turning it into something meaningful for others, because that's not easy to do. So congratulations, number one. That's another reason I'm going to promote this book, because it serves more than just one purpose, which is always good too, to double down on these things. So educate, inform, entertain, of course. That's going to be first part with fiction book, but getting people subtly aware of things as opposed to being overt about it, which rarely works, is very smart. So I can't wait for the second book. When's the sequel coming out now, Jim?
Well, I have, you're a writer, as are many of your listeners. You go through this process of outlining. I've got every scene outlined. The problem is my wife keeps telling me I need to take that month and go to Key West or, go, to Istanbul, somewhere just to write. I'd love to have it out by early next year.
Okay.
But as you know, sometimes these things aren't up to the author, right?
No, I did that once. I had a real estate training company years ago, before 2008. And I do these events, and people come up to me, hey, where's your book? I don't have a book. And my staff finally said, Doug, you need to go write a book. I'm like, all right, well, I'm too busy at the office, so I got to get out of town for a while. So at the time I had a little airplane. I flew down to Turks and Caicos to write my book in a week. And I wrote every single day, I come back, hand it off, didn't look at it for a while, looked at it again about 2 weeks later. It was the worst book ever written because I did it in a week. So of course it stunk. And
but you got to start with the first draft. You got to start with the first draft.
It was. I never published it. It was so ugly. But
I did. You had a good motivation. When I was, I started seriously writing in 2016 after the tragedy, but really, when Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine in 2020, early 2022, that's when I said, okay, I got to get this book out because the plot is so realistic, and I got to get it out. So I had finished it by 2023, but as you know, it takes a while to get things edited, printed, and published, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm really happy with it now and looking forward to the sequel.
Terrific. Did you give it to any of the friends in the current administration at all or anything?
I have. I think a number have read it, and I've sent. I sent President Bush a copy, and I sent his daughter Jenna a copy, hoping she might put it in her book club, but she hadn't done it yet.
How about current, the 2026 people?
I have. I've sent it to a number of folks around Washington, but I've got some testimonies in the book, and from former 3 and 4 stars and Delta Force heroes, and those kind of people. But I haven't asked for anybody in the administration to endorse it. Although I'd love for them to, but I haven't asked them that.
Let me, we'll talk offline about this. But I got a friend there, so we'll make sure you guys connect, and we'll get it in the hands of some more people there. For sure.
Well, that'd be great, particularly if they are open-minded to this lesson that America really needs to stay active on the global stage.
No, these are the people. Fine. It'd be fine. Current people all in. Yeah, no problem. We'll happily do that. So Reign of Secrets, it's available now on Amazon. Okay. And any parting words or wisdom you want to bestow upon the audience here before we close out?
Well, look, your audience is a audience of accomplished men and women who've accomplished great things in their lives. My encouragement will be to record your lessons of life, whether it's audio, whether it's novel, fiction, nonfiction. Leave a legacy. Let your children, grandchildren know how you became so successful. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily the point of Reign of Secrets, but it is a point. I'm hoping my grandkids read it and see what their granddad thought about life and thought about the role of America. So I would just encourage your listeners to, I know many of them already are, but to do that before they get to the point where they can't remember things.
I forget things now, but that's why you had to have a good journalist to interview you to pull it out of you, because I need someone to ask me questions. But that's very good. We've done a bunch of books like that for people that stage where, they're working so hard. Sometimes the kids or grandkids weren't around to even get to know them that well. So they do it for that reason. Like, I need to understand my legacy. And it's a good thing. It's important, I think, because, your picture on Instagram from 10 years ago is not going to be found easily, but a book has a spine and it stays on a shelf and it's right there,
Yeah. I do like that picture, though, because it had a lot more hair here. So
He was very handsome. Look, Bruce Willis did great when he went bald. You're fine. You
yeah,
still got half
he
the head
did.
hair.
Well, thanks so much, Doug. It's been a pleasure to speak with you,
Great.
and look forward to hoping to have a chance to do it again.
We definitely will. We got a lot more to unpack. I know you've got a history of great stories and wisdom we can help you out with. Stick around when we're done with the show here. I got another question for you. Thank you so much for being on the show today. This is Doug Crowe. If you didn't take notes, just click below. They're right there and get a copy of Jim's book. We'll see you later.